Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Tech Truth. Today we're coming from this cramped little closet under the stairs. No, it's not where I live, but it is where my router does spend most of its time. And today we're going to be talking about the Asus GT AX11000 and the Asus RT AX92U routers. These routers are part of the Asus router line, both being higher end routers, both being used mainly for gaming. The RT-AX92U, I don't know if I use it for my main gaming router, but it is quite a good router for using a mesh network within the Asus router line. GT-AX11000 currently costs around $530 Canadian, or around 430 US American, and it's this big one right here. It comes with eight antennas. It's a tri-band router, so unlike old routers, which only have a 2.4 gigahertz and a 5 gigahertz band, this one has a 2.4 gigahertz and two 5 gigahertz band, which they call 5 gigahertz 1, 5 gigahertz 2. Because this router uses the new AX standard, it is considered part of the new Wi-Fi 6 standard and is capable of reaching speeds of 11,000 Mbps wirelessly. Using, though, the 160 megahertz band, which is added with the AX, older routers only have the 20, the 40, or the 80 megahertz band. Part of the reason we're here talking about this router, though, is can you actually reach those speeds, and what happens if you can't? Additionally, all these routers are backwards compatible, so it also works with the AC standard, the N standard, the B standard, and the A standard. I don't know how many places you're going to see the N2 ones, a B and an A anymore, but it is backwards compatible with those. It also comes with a 2.5 gigabyte per second WAN or LAN Ethernet port for your gaming needs, increasing your bandwidth, making it a lot faster, decreasing any lag. And it also comes with Game Boost to reduce the network lag over networks for your gaming servers all over the world. It also comes with an Android or iOS app to monitor the system remotely, which is really handy when you're trying to manage multiple family members in your home, or gaming systems in your home, or even when your kids' friends come over and they all want to get on the Wi-Fi. It also has a guest network to keep all of your family versus friends network activity separate from each other, providing a little bit of extra privacy and security in that regard. To be quite honest, there's way too many features to discuss, but some of my favorites with this router is the lifetime trend micro protection monitoring for malware, viruses, and intrusions. The ability to create VPN networks or use pre-existing VPNs using Asus's VPN Fusion, which, if you don't know, VPN Fusion allows you to use one or more VPN servers to simultaneously assign devices to particular VPNs, making it great for when you're using virtual machines or just wanting to bypass geographical location restrictions such as Netflix, but only on maybe one device, or your streaming TV or your streaming box, whatever it may be. It allows you to pick and choose where you want your VPN to go, so you don't have to be constantly turning on your VPN, turning off your VPN, having to click on a button to set it all up and everything else. It's for that device. Again, if you don't want to use VPN for that device, it's just something you'll have to turn off, and it's pretty easy to use. Really nice feature to have. Also comes with the Asus Smart Connect, which is supposed to automatically arrange clients to best maximize your bandwidth usage. The results have varied, and many users end up turning it off because of disconnects and whatnot, but it is a feature that's on there. You know, if you're using a device and really you're only doing some web surfing and it only needs a 2.4 gigahertz band, then it'll surf that. It'll only be accessing that band. If you ramp up activity and all of a sudden you're doing networking and you're on your Skype or Zoom or Teams or whatever, then it'll throw you onto the 5 gigahertz, one of the two 5 gigahertz bands that are available with this router. And probably the most important feature is the AI mesh Asus AI Mesh, which very easily connects multiple compatible Asus routers together to create a whole home mesh Wi-Fi network using the main router as your access point. So this is your main system. In this case, the GT is going to be your best choice. It has the most power, it has the bigger processor, it has the most bandwidth, etc. So that would be your home system. So the AI Mesh can be used either with the full wireless mode, using the third band of the 5 gigahertz, or using the second band of the 5 gigahertz, or through Ethernet backhaul, making all the bands, which essentially then makes all your bands available. So if I want to use AI Mesh and I want to throw in this RT in there into the mix as my mesh network, so what I would do is, if you don't have a cable running to it, is it would use the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz one band to send and receive information from the internet, from your device, sorry, while it would use the third band to send and receive information from this router, from the main router here, which is the GT. Essentially, it cuts down your network in half, because you're not able to use all three bands, but it does make it faster for receiving information between the mesh network. If you do have cables running, and a wired Ethernet cable running from this main router up to wherever you have these little guys located, you would use the Ethernet backhaul, and essentially that opens you up for using all three bands of wireless connectivity. Speaking of mesh products, the other router we're going to talk about today is the Asus RT AX92U. It's usually around 300 Canadian, but usually right now you can get them on sale for around 250 Canadian or 200 US, depending on what site you're on. So the RT, much like the GT, has a lot of the same features if you decide to use it as its own router. Most importantly being the ability to use tri-band and supposedly the 160 megahertz band. This makes the router supposedly ideal for anyone wanting to use the AI Mesh with the GT AX11000 or its predecessor, the GT AX-E11000, which the E standing for enhanced and using the most up-to-date Wi-Fi standard that's available. As such, these routers mostly perform to spec, but the GT AX11000 does have some quirks that have been a repeated problem since I've been using it, which has been for at least over a year or two now. I bought it when it was that gaming router out there on the thing. It was the one to buy from Asus, and it was going to provide you the best results. That said, one of the repeated issues that I've seen is that if you look right here, right there, it indicates when you're using the internet. So whatever your modem is connected to that. One of the things that I don't know why it happens, I've dealt with Asus on it. I've gone through their tech support. I've reset, I've hard reset, I've soft reset. I've done their reset software, and it really just doesn't fix the problem, but it'll just cut out. It can't connect to your internet and your modem. So even though your modem's working, it's running, it's providing whatever speed you're supposed to be getting, it'll just stop. And it doesn't do it a lot, but sometimes it happens, you don't know why, and you'll come down and be like, why can't I get internet? The lights turned red, and there's just nothing you can do about it. So when that happens, I usually end up doing, if I've tried different things, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but ends up at some point it's either a soft or a hard reset, going into the modem interface, the GUI, the web GUI or web interface, and just setting it up as a brand new fresh router, making sure the internet works, making sure everything is done, set up properly, but without importing your old settings. I find if you try to set it up right from the beginning when it's had this problem by importing your new settings, it just keeps having that problem. It will not connect to the internet. So ideally what you do when it happens is I would set it all up, reset it, get it working. The light would turn white, pretend like I didn't have any other internet configurations, make sure it works, give it a chance. And then after all that, then I would go back in and I would import my previous settings into the router, and usually usually it would work. If I followed those steps, I usually didn't have a problem. Funny thing is, even after talking to Asus a few times about this, updating their firmware every time I've talked to them, and just updating their firmware every time a new one has come out, it's never fixed the problem. Don't know why. I don't even know if they know why. But just be aware that if you buy it, if it happens, don't panic. You can fix it. It does work itself out in the end. Usually you may have to spend a little bit of time, but it gets there. And I don't think it's worth it. It's worth not getting because of that one issue. So something to be aware of as a second issue with this router, and it's not so much the router as the way really depends on where you live and how these things are managed. So for those in Canada where I live, the GT11000X supports 160 megahertz only on the 5 gigahertz one band. You can use Wi-Fi 6 or AX on the 5 gigahertz 1 and 2 bands, but if you try to do the 160 megahertz to get that full spectrum, it won't happen. You can only do it on the gigahertz 1 band, which is funny because if you're pairing these top of the line products together, the RT and the GT, you run into a little bit of a problem of actually getting 11,000 Mbps or anything even close to it. As that wireless experience is pretty much impossible in this region, and it may be in yours, and it's something you're going to have to look up. And so as I was trying to maximize my wireless around my house, you know, I bought a few of these RTs to add in a mesh network I added a few of these RTs to add with my GT to make this mesh network around my house, so I could have AX, Wi-Fi 6, 160 megahertz on every device. Although not all supported it, you know, trying to future-proof it. After doing all this research and trying to do that, it took me, after hours of online searching and and finally reaching Asus online technical support, connecting with level 1, going through all their questions and all their reset this, reset that, try doing this, try this software, and then finally getting to level 2 support. It took that long before I finally got a response of what was going on with these routers. And finally, when I got to someone who at Asus that I don't know if they finally just hit the right person, or I finally went up to level whatever it is before someone tells you anything, I found out that I couldn't even come close to getting the suggested speeds identified by Asus on all of their information, you know, tri-band, Wi-Fi 6, AX standard, 11,000 megabits per second. I never reached that. So the reason being is that there's limitations dependent on what region of the world you live in. So in Canada, I can't use 160 megahertz on the 5 gigahertz 2 band, and the RT, this one right here, this little guy right here, although it says it on the box, tri-band, 160 megahertz, AX standard, should be able to reach maximum speeds. Doesn't matter whether you're whether you're using AI mesh or just going straight through, is the fact that that router doesn't even have the ability to use 160 megahertz on either one of its 5 gigahertz 1 or 2 bands. So neither band will allow you to use 160 megahertz. So for those costs of $500 and $300, I can't actually use the devices to their full potential. So when I brought this up to Asus and I said, well, what's going on? Look, you guys can see, like, look at the box. I get told, well, it depends on the region you live in. Different regions have different restrictions. And I went, where does it say that in the information? And of course I get asked, well, where did you buy this? And I'm like, well, Canada. It's like, well, did you buy it off a Canadian site? Yes, I did buy it off a Canadian site. It's a Canadian version. Well, then in Canada, this is the way it is. And I'm like, well, where on any of the documentation, online or in the box or anywhere, do you guys describe that? Or do you detail this little issue, this hiccup that you're saying is not a problem? Because quite honestly, I just spent a lot of money on these routers to essentially not be able to use them to their full potential. At the end of the day, I could have bought a cheaper router without the 160 megahertz availability, and I could have saved myself a lot of money. But the fact was, as a consumer, I went into it not knowing what the restrictions of this router was, and you're not going to find that on any you're not going to clearly find that at any site, the Asus, the Canadian site, or whatever. So if you're planning on buying these, I really suggest that you get a hold of Asus and tell them your region, the area you live in, and ask them what's enabled and what's not. Because depending on where you live is really going to depend on how you get the most out of these routers. And I get some people don't care about the wireless, you know, whether you can max out at 80 or 160, it's enough for you. It's got 4 1 gigahertz connections, not a problem. It's got the 2.5 gig if you're connecting directly to a device that you can maximize that on. But really, if you're trying to maximize your wireless for gaming and you can't run wires, I think that's something you need to know, and that's something the company's not telling us, and they're not making it easy to find that out. So at the end of the day, make sure you do your homework before you go and buy an AX Wi-Fi 6 device, because depending on what the restrictions are in your area, your mileage is going to vary, and so is your pocketbook. Because quite honestly, if you think you're getting that high-end one with everything maxed out, you're going to pay a lot, and you may not actually receive what you're paying for. This has been Jason from The Tech Truth. Please like, dislike, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, The Tech Truth is out there. See you, everybody.